Hello, and welcome to The Sleepy Why, the cozy corner where we wrestle with life's biggest why questions as our minds drift toward dreamland. We're here together in this peaceful moment, ready to explore one of the most mysteriously familiar experiences of our modern lives. Before we dive into tonight's fascinating journey, we'd love for you to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And maybe drop a comment letting us know what city or corner of the world you're listening from tonight. We love imagining all the cozy places where curiosity meets comfort around the globe. Picture this familiar moment. You pick up your phone, maybe just to check one quick thing. You open Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or whatever your poison happens to be. You start scrolling. Just a quick peek, you tell yourself. Maybe 5 minutes, tops. Then suddenly, mysteriously, you look up and realize an hour has vanished, completely disappeared, gone without a trace, like it never existed at all. Meanwhile, remember last week when you were waiting for a friend who was running late? 5 minutes felt like an eternity. You checked your phone 17 times. You reorganized your wallet. You counted ceiling tiles. Those 5 minutes stretched like taffy, each second crawling by with excruciating slowness. What's happening here? Why does time become this shape-shifting trickster when we're scrolling through our feeds? Why do hours shrink to minutes in the digital world, while minutes expand to hours in the real world? Tonight, we're going to uncover the beautiful, complex, and slightly unsettling science behind this modern mystery that we've all lived through countless times. Part 1. The Time Thief in Your Pocket. Ever notice something weird about how your brain experiences time? You know that feeling when you're doing something you love, maybe reading a captivating book, having an amazing conversation, or, yes, scrolling through social media, and time just disappears? Psychologists have a name for this phenomenon, and it's more fascinating than you might expect. We've all been in this situation. You're lying in bed, phone in hand, telling yourself you'll just check a few posts before sleep. The next thing you know, you're 3 hours deep in a rabbit hole of videos about tiny cooking, drama between influencers you've never heard of, and that one friend from high school's vacation photos from 2 years ago. Your brain went somewhere else entirely, and time went with it. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes, and it's going to blow your mind. Your brain doesn't actually have a built-in clock. Think about that for a moment. We have specialized cells for seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling, but there's no specific time detector anywhere in your head. Instead, your brain constructs your experience of time by piecing together information from multiple sources, like a detective solving a mystery with scattered clues. Your brain is like a security guard who's juggling 50 balls while trying to keep track of what time it is. When you're scrolling social media, something incredible happens to that juggling act. The constant stream of new, colorful, emotionally engaging content doesn't just capture your attention, it hijacks your brain's entire time processing system. Meanwhile, in your brain, there's a network of regions working together to create your sense of time passing. Your prefrontal cortex, that wise old manager sitting behind your forehead, usually helps you stay aware of time by monitoring your goals and keeping track of what you're doing. But when you're scrolling, that manager gets completely absorbed in processing the endless stream of new information. It's like your brain's timekeeper gets so fascinated by the show that they forget to do their job. Try this right now. Think about the last time you were deeply engaged in scrolling. Can you remember being aware of time passing? Probably not. That's because your brain was in what researchers call a flow state, a psychological condition where you're so absorbed in an activity that everything else, including time awareness, fades into the background. But wait, it gets even weirder. Social media platforms aren't just accidentally good at making time disappear. They're specifically designed to do exactly that. Every element of these apps, from the infinite scroll to the variable reward schedule, has been carefully crafted by teams of neuroscientists, behavioral psychologists, and user experience designers whose entire job is to make time vanish while you're using their platform. What if I told you that the same psychological mechanisms that make slot machines addictive are built into every social media feed? It's true. The unpredictable nature of what you'll see next, will it be funny, shocking, boring, or emotionally moving, triggers your brain's reward system in the exact same way that gambling does. And when your brain's reward system is activated, time perception goes completely haywire. Here's something that will blow your mind. Studies show that when people are engaged with social media, their brains produce less of a neurotransmitter called dopamine in the areas responsible for time perception. It's as if your brain's internal clock starts running on low batteries. The mechanism that usually whispers, "Hey, you've been doing this for a while," gets quieter and quieter until it's barely audible. This explains why you feel completely shocked when you realize how much time has passed. Your brain wasn't lying to you or playing tricks. It genuinely had no idea. The systems responsible for tracking time were too busy processing the constant stream of new information to do their usual job. And that leads us to an even more amazing discovery about how our brains actually construct the experience of time, moment by moment. Part 2. The Neuroscience of Digital Time. Warping. Picture this scenario. You're scrolling through your feed, and you come across a video that's marked as 30 seconds long. You watch it, and it feels like it lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then you see a post from someone you don't like very much, and reading their caption feels like it takes 5 minutes, even though it was probably 30 seconds. Same app, same activity, completely different experience of time. What's going on here? We've all been there, and the science behind it is absolutely fascinating. Your brain doesn't experience time as a steady river flowing at a constant rate. Instead, it experiences time more like a jazz musician experiences rhythm, flexible, responsive, and constantly adjusting to the emotional and cognitive demands of the moment. But here's the really fascinating part. Your brain processes time differently depending on what type of content you're consuming. When you're looking at something that triggers strong emotions, whether positive or negative, your brain's amygdala, that ancient alarm system deep in your head, starts firing rapidly. This emotional activation actually changes how your brain processes temporal information. Meanwhile, in your brain, there's a beautiful symphony of neural networks working together to create your sense of time. Scientists have discovered that your brain uses at least 3 different timing systems simultaneously. There's a millisecond system for things like understanding speech, a seconds to minutes system for tracking ongoing activities, and a longer-term system for understanding durations of hours and days. Social media is particularly devastating to that middle system, the one that tracks seconds to minutes. This is your brain's natural activity timer, the one that usually tells you how long you've been doing something. When you're scrolling, this system gets overwhelmed by the constant task, switching that happens as you move from post to post. Try this right now. Think about what your brain does when you scroll through social media. In the span of 30 seconds, you might see a funny meme, a political post that makes you angry, a beautiful sunset photo, an advertisement for something you don't need, a video of someone's dog, and a news article about something happening halfway around the world. Your brain is constantly switching between different types of processing, different emotional states, and different levels of attention. You know that feeling when you're trying to have a conversation with someone while the TV is on, and you find yourself constantly distracted by whatever's happening on screen. That's exactly what's happening in your brain when you're scrolling, except instead of just 2 streams of information, you're processing hundreds of micro-experiences in rapid succession. What if I told you that this constant task switching doesn't just make time disappear? It actually changes how your brain forms memories. When you're scrolling, your brain is so busy processing new information that it doesn't have the resources to properly encode when things happened. This is why, when you finally look up from your phone, you can't really remember what you saw or in what order you saw it. Your brain experienced it all as one continuous, timeless blur. Here's something that will blow your mind. Researchers have found that people who spend more time on social media show measurable changes in their brain's time processing regions. It's not permanent damage, but it's a real, physical adaptation to the demands of processing constant streams of information. Your brain literally rewires itself to be better at handling the rapid-fire content of social media. And part of that adaptation involves becoming less sensitive to the passage of time. But wait, it gets even weirder. The infinite scroll design that's now standard on virtually every social media platform exploits a specific quirk of human psychology called the completion bias. Your brain is wired to feel satisfied when you finish something, when you reach the end of a chapter, complete a task, or finish a meal. But social media feeds never end. There's always one more post, one more video, one more thing to see. This creates a psychological state where your brain is constantly seeking closure that never comes. It's like being perpetually hungry but never able to finish a meal. And when your brain is in this state of seeking completion, it pays much less attention to how much time is passing. You're not just scrolling through content, you're trapped in a loop of unfulfilled satisfaction that makes time disappear. Meanwhile, there's another layer to this mystery that's even more personal and surprising. The way time distorts during social media use isn't just about the technology, it's about what's happening in your unique brain, with your specific patterns of attention, emotion, and memory. Part 3. The personal time machine. Ever notice something weird about how different types of social media content affect your sense of time? You know that feeling when you're watching short videos, like TikToks or Instagram Reels, and suddenly an hour has vanished, but you feel like you've barely seen anything? Compare that to scrolling through photos from a friend's vacation, where you might spend 20 minutes looking at 30 photos and feel like you've experienced their entire trip with them. We've all been in both situations, and the difference reveals something profound about how our brains construct time from moment to moment. Your brain doesn't just passively experience time, it actively creates your sense of duration based on how much it thinks it is processed and experienced. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Your brain judges how much time has passed partly by how much new information it has encoded into memory. When you're watching rapid-fire short videos, your brain is processing tons of new information, but it's all happening so quickly that very little of it gets properly stored in your memory. So when you wake up from your scrolling session, your brain looks back and thinks, I don't remember much happening, so it must not have been very long. It's like your brain is a photographer who's been clicking the shutter rapidly for an hour, but the film keeps getting exposed before the images can develop. At the end of the session, you have almost no clear pictures to show for all that activity. Your brain judges duration partly by the quality and quantity of memories formed, so when those memories are thin and scattered, time feels compressed. Meanwhile, in your brain, there's a fascinating competition happening between different types of attention. Your focused attention, the kind you use when you're reading a book or having a deep conversation, actually helps you track time more accurately. But social media is designed to capture what psychologists call bottom-up attention, the kind that gets grabbed by bright colors, sudden movements, and unexpected sounds. Try this right now. Think about the difference between reading a long-form article and scrolling through a feed. When you read an article, your brain settles into a steady rhythm of processing information. You can feel yourself moving through the piece, making progress, building understanding. But when you're scrolling, your brain is constantly being jolted from one thing to another, never settling into any kind of rhythm or flow. You might not have noticed, but your brain actually uses rhythm and pattern to help track time. When you're doing something with a predictable structure, like reading, having a conversation, or even watching a traditional TV show, your brain can use that structure as a kind of temporal scaffolding. But social media feeds are deliberately designed to be unpredictable, which removes your brain's ability to use pattern recognition as a time tracking tool. What if I told you that the specific way you scroll also affects how time feels? Fast scrollers, people who zip through content quickly, tend to experience more time distortion than slow scrollers. This is because fast scrolling creates a state similar to what happens when you're driving on a highway versus walking through a neighborhood. When you're moving quickly past lots of information, your brain can't process the details, so it has fewer landmarks to use for measuring time. Here's something that will blow your mind. Your emotional state while scrolling dramatically affects how time feels. When you're feeling good, entertained, amused, socially connected, time passes more quickly. But when you're feeling anxious, envious, or angry, which social media can easily trigger, Time can feel both distorted and emotionally heavy. You might lose track of time, but when you finally surface, you feel like you've been through an emotional marathon. This is because your brain's time processing system is closely connected to your emotional processing system. When you're experiencing strong emotions, your brain prioritizes processing those feelings over keeping track of time. It's like your brain's emotional system is shouting so loudly that the quiet voice of time awareness gets drowned out. But wait, it gets even more personal than that. The way social media distorts time is different for everyone, depending on your unique psychological makeup. Highly sensitive people tend to experience more time distortion because their brains are processing more emotional and sensory information from each post. People with anxiety might find that time feels simultaneously compressed and endless. They lose track of how long they've been scrolling, but the experience feels emotionally interminable. And here's a beautiful contradiction that makes us human. Even though we know that social media makes time disappear, we often turn to it precisely when we want time to pass. Waiting for an appointment? Scroll through your phone. Bored during a meeting? Quick check of Instagram. We've unconsciously learned to use these platforms as time machines, devices that can make unwanted moments vanish. But that leads us to an even more amazing discovery about what this all means for how we experience our lives, our relationships, and our sense of being present in the world. Part 4. The attention economy and your personal time. Picture this familiar moment. You're having dinner with someone you care about. The conversation is flowing, the food is good, and you're genuinely enjoying yourself. Then, almost without thinking, you reach for your phone. Maybe you just want to show them a funny video, or check the time, or see if someone responded to your message. You open your phone, and somehow, 5 minutes later, you're both sitting in silence, staring at your respective screens. We've all been in this situation, and it reveals something profound about how social media doesn't just steal time. It changes the entire quality of our attention and presence. Your brain, which was fully engaged in the rich, complex experience of human connection, suddenly gets redirected into the rapid-fire processing mode that social media demands. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes, and it's both fascinating and a little unsettling. Your brain has a limited amount of what psychologists call attentional resources. Think of it like a spotlight that can only illuminate so much at once. When you're fully present with someone, that spotlight is focused and steady, creating a warm, continuous glow of attention. But when you start scrolling, that spotlight starts flickering rapidly between dozens of different things, never settling anywhere long enough to create real depth or connection. Your brain is like a skilled chef who's been preparing a complex, beautiful meal with full attention and care. Then suddenly, someone bursts into the kitchen and starts shouting rapid-fire orders for 30 different dishes. The chef's attention gets scattered, the original meal gets forgotten, and everything becomes a blur of frantic activity without much satisfaction. Meanwhile, in your brain, there's a constant battle happening between what researchers call top-down and bottom-up attention. Top-down attention is the kind you consciously direct when you choose to focus on a conversation, a book, or a task. Bottom-up attention is the kind that gets captured by sudden movements, bright colors, or unexpected sounds. Social media is specifically designed to trigger bottom-up attention, which means it's constantly interrupting your ability to maintain focus. Try this right now. Think about the last time you were doing something that required sustained attention, maybe reading, working on a project, or having a deep conversation. How did it feel when you were fully absorbed in that activity? There's a specific quality to that kind of attention. It feels rich, satisfying, and somehow nourishing. Now compare that to how you feel after a long scrolling session. The difference is striking, isn't it? You know that feeling when you've been scrolling for a while and you finally put your phone down and everything feels somehow less vivid? Colors seem a bit duller, sounds seem flatter, and even your own thoughts feel scattered and fragmented. That's because your brain has been in rapid processing mode for so long that it needs time to readjust to the slower, richer pace of normal sensory experience. What if I told you that this isn't just about individual moments of distraction? It's actually changing how your brain processes attention and time on a deeper level. Researchers have found that people who spend more time on social media show measurable changes in their ability to sustain attention on single tasks. It's not that they become less intelligent, but their brains become more adapted to processing multiple streams of information simultaneously and less adapted to the kind of sustained, focused attention that deep thinking requires. Here's something that will blow your mind. The average person checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. But here's the really interesting part. Most of these phone checks last less than 30 seconds. Your brain is constantly switching between regular life mode and social media processing mode, and each switch requires mental energy and creates a small disruption in your sense of time and presence. It's like your brain is a musician trying to play a beautiful, flowing piece of music, but every few minutes, someone interrupts to ask them to play a few rapid notes on a completely different instrument. The musician can do it, but the original piece loses its coherence and flow. Your ability to experience sustained, present-moment awareness gets fragmented by these constant micro-interruptions. But wait, it gets even more fascinating when you consider what this means for memory and meaning making. When your attention is constantly fragmented, your brain has fewer opportunities to process experiences deeply and integrate them into coherent memories. This is why days that involve a lot of social media use often feel like they disappeared, not just because time passed quickly while you were scrolling, but because your brain didn't have the sustained attention necessary to form rich, meaningful memories of the rest of your day. Meanwhile, there's something even more subtle happening that affects how you experience your own life and relationships. When your brain gets used to the rapid-fire stimulation of social media, everyday experiences can start to feel slow or boring by comparison. A sunset that would normally capture your attention might feel understimulating. A conversation with a friend might feel like it's moving too slowly. Your brain has been trained to expect constant novelty and stimulation, so the natural rhythms of life can feel inadequate. And that leads us to a profound question about what all this means for how we want to live our lives and experience our precious time on this planet. Part 5. The Paradox of Present Moment Awareness. Ever notice something weird about how you feel right before you pick up your phone to scroll? You know that feeling when you're sitting quietly, maybe waiting for something, or just having a moment of stillness, and suddenly you feel this urge to reach for your device? It's not usually because you need to check something specific. It's more like an almost physical discomfort with the present moment itself. We've all been in this situation, and it reveals something profound about how social media changes our relationship with stillness, boredom, and the natural rhythms of consciousness. Your brain, which has become accustomed to constant stimulation, starts to interpret quiet moments as problems to be solved rather than experiences to be savored. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Your brain has what researchers call a default mode network, a set of brain regions that become active when you're not focused on any particular task. This network is responsible for some of the most important aspects of human consciousness: self-reflection, meaning-making, processing emotions, and integrating experiences into your sense of identity. When you're constantly scrolling, this default mode network rarely gets a chance to do its job. It's like having a wise counselor who's trying to help you process your experiences and understand your life. But every time they start to speak, they get interrupted by someone bursting in with urgent but ultimately trivial information. Your brain is like a musician who needs quiet moments between songs to tune their instrument and prepare for the next piece. Social media keeps your brain so busy processing new information that it never gets those crucial tuning moments. Over time, this can lead to a subtle but profound sense of disconnection from your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Meanwhile, in your brain, there's a beautiful process that happens during quiet moments that's essential for psychological well-being. When you're not actively processing new information, your brain consolidates memories, makes connections between different experiences, and engages in what psychologists call meaning-making. This is when insights arise, when you process emotions, and when you develop a coherent sense of who you are and what matters to you. Try this right now. Think about the last time you had a genuine insight or creative idea. Where were you? What were you doing? Chances are you weren't scrolling through social media. You were probably in a quiet moment, maybe in the shower, taking a walk, or just sitting quietly. That's not a coincidence. Your brain needs unstimulated time to do its deeper work. You might not have noticed, but there's a specific quality to thoughts and ideas that arise during quiet moments versus thoughts that arise while you're consuming media. The quiet moment thoughts tend to feel more personally meaningful, more connected to your actual life and concerns. They're the kinds of thoughts that help you understand yourself and your relationships better. What if I told you that the fear of boredom that drives much of our social media use is actually a fear of encountering ourselves? When we're constantly consuming other people's content, we're always focused outward, always processing external information. But in quiet moments, we naturally turn inward, and that's where we encounter our own thoughts, feelings, and experiences, including the ones we might prefer to avoid. Here's something that will blow your mind. Studies show that people would rather give themselves electric shocks than sit quietly with their own thoughts for 15 minutes. We've become so uncomfortable with inner stillness that we'll choose physical discomfort over mental quiet. Social media provides the perfect escape from this discomfort, offering an endless stream of external stimulation that keeps us from having to face whatever might be going on inside. But wait, it gets even more beautiful when you consider what we're actually missing. Those quiet moments aren't empty or unproductive. They're when your brain does some of its most important work. They're when you process grief, integrate joy, solve problems creatively, and develop deeper understanding of your relationships and experiences. It's like your brain is a skilled craftsperson who needs uninterrupted time to work on their masterpiece. Social media keeps interrupting with requests for urgent but trivial tasks. The craftsperson can handle these interruptions, but the masterpiece, your deep understanding of yourself and your life, never gets the sustained attention it needs to develop. Meanwhile, there's a paradox here that's both frustrating and hopeful. The same technology that fragments our attention and compresses our sense of time also has the potential to connect us with others, expose us to new ideas, and help us feel less alone in the world. Social media isn't inherently good or bad. It's a tool that can either support or undermine our deeper human needs, depending on how we use it. And that leads us to the most practical and hopeful part of our exploration, understanding what we can do with this knowledge to reclaim our time, and attention. Part 6. Reclaiming your relationship with time. Picture this scenario. You wake up in the morning, and instead of immediately reaching for your phone, you take a moment to notice how you're feeling. Maybe you look out the window, take a few deep breaths, or just lie there for a moment feeling the weight of your body in the bed. You start your day from a place of present moment awareness rather than immediate stimulation, seeking. We've all experienced mornings like this, probably more often in the past than recently. And there's something profoundly different about how the entire day unfolds when it begins with presence rather than scrolling. Your brain starts the day in a state of calm awareness rather than reactive processing, and this sets the tone for how you'll experience time throughout the day. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes when you make choices like this. You're not just changing your morning routine, you're actively retraining your brain's relationship with attention and time. Every moment that you choose present. Moment awareness over external stimulation is like a small act of rebellion against the attention economy that profits from your distraction. Your brain is remarkably plastic, meaning it can change and adapt throughout your life. The same neuroplasticity that allows your brain to become adapted to rapid-fire social media processing can also help it readapt to slower, more sustained forms of attention. It's like retraining a muscle that has become accustomed to quick, jerky movements to once again perform smooth, flowing motions. Meanwhile, in your brain, there are specific practices that can help restore your natural sense of time and presence. Meditation, for example, isn't just about relaxation. It's literally training your brain to sustain attention on one thing at a time. When you meditate regularly, you're strengthening the neural networks responsible for focused attention and weakening the pathways that create distractibility. Try this right now. Put down your phone and spend just 2 minutes noticing your breath. Don't try to change it, just notice it. Feel the air moving in and out of your body. When your mind wanders to thoughts about social media, work, or anything else, gently bring your attention back to your breath. This simple practice is like strength training for your attention. You know that feeling when you've been scrolling for a while and you finally put your phone down and you feel slightly disoriented, like you're emerging from a dream. That's your brain transitioning from scattered processing mode back to integrated awareness mode. The more you practice activities that require sustained attention, reading, meditation, deep conversation, creative work, the stronger this integrated awareness becomes. What if I told you that simply becoming aware of how social media affects your sense of time is already a significant step toward changing your relationship with it? When you notice that you've lost track of time while scrolling, instead of judging yourself, you can simply acknowledge what happened and make a different choice in the next moment. Awareness itself is a form of presence. Here's something that will blow your mind. Research shows that people who practice mindfulness meditation for just 8 weeks show measurable improvements in their ability to regulate attention and resist distraction. Their brains literally become more skilled at maintaining focus and less reactive to external stimuli. You don't need to become a meditation master. Even small amounts of practice can make a meaningful difference. But wait, it gets even more hopeful when you consider the simple changes you can make in how you interact with social media. Instead of mindlessly scrolling, you can practice what researchers call intentional engagement. This means opening social media with a specific purpose, engaging with content that genuinely interests or inspires you, and closing the app when you've accomplished your goal. It's like the difference between wandering aimlessly through a shopping mall and visiting a specific store to buy something you actually need. Both involve being in the same environment, but the quality of attention and satisfaction is completely different. When you approach social media with intention, you're much more likely to have a positive experience and much less likely to lose track of time. Meanwhile, there are specific strategies for managing the time distortion that social media creates. Setting timers, using apps that track your usage, and creating phone-free zones in your home can all help restore your natural sense of time boundaries. But the most powerful strategy is cultivating alternative sources of satisfaction and engagement that don't rely on external stimulation. This might mean rediscovering hobbies that require sustained attention, spending more time in nature, engaging in physical activities, or simply having more face-to-face conversations with people you care about. These activities train your brain to find satisfaction in slower, deeper forms of engagement rather than and that leads us to a profound shift in how we can think about time, attention, and what it means to live a satisfying life in the digital age. Part 7. The Deeper Wisdom of Temporal Awareness. Ever notice something weird about how differently you experience time when you're doing something you love versus something you're just consuming? You know that feeling when you're engaged in a creative project, having a meaningful conversation, or learning something new, and time seems to flow in this perfect rhythm, not too fast, not too slow, just right? Compare that to the strange, compressed time warp of social media scrolling. We've all experienced both states, and the contrast reveals something profound about what kinds of activities actually nourish our souls, and what kinds merely occupy our attention. Your brain experiences time differently depending on whether you're actively creating meaning or passively consuming content created by others. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. When you're engaged in meaningful activity, whether it's cooking a meal, writing in a journal, playing music, or having a deep conversation, your brain enters a state that psychologists call flow. In flow states, your sense of time becomes naturally attuned to the rhythm of the activity itself. You're not fighting against time or trying to make it disappear, you're moving with it. Your brain is like a skilled dancer who's learned to move in perfect harmony with the music. When you're in flow, your brain's time processing system works in harmony with your attention and intention, creating a sense of temporal coherence that feels deeply satisfying. But when you're scrolling, it's like that same dancer is trying to move to dozens of different songs playing simultaneously. The rhythm gets completely disrupted. Meanwhile, in your brain, there's a beautiful integration that happens during flow states. Your prefrontal cortex, which is usually busy with self-criticism and future planning, quiets down. Your default mode network, which creates the sense of a separate self, becomes less active. What emerges is a state of consciousness where you're fully present, completely engaged, and naturally attuned to time. Try this right now. Think about an activity that consistently puts you in flow. Maybe it's playing an instrument, gardening, cooking, drawing, or having certain types of conversations. Notice how time feels different when you're doing this activity. It's not that you lose track of time exactly. It's more like you become harmonized with time in a way that feels natural and sustainable. You might not have noticed, but there's a specific quality to satisfaction that comes from flow activities versus consumption activities. After a good flow session, you feel energized, clear, and somehow more yourself. After a long, scrolling session, you might feel entertained, but you're more likely to feel drained, scattered, and disconnected from your own sense of purpose. What if I told you that this difference points to something fundamental about human nature and well-being? We're not designed to be passive consumers of endless streams of information. We're designed to be active participants in meaningful activities that engage our creativity, our relationships, and our capacity for growth. Social media can be part of a balanced life, but it can't be the center of it without creating a profound sense of emptiness. Here's something that will blow your mind. Studies of people who report high levels of life satisfaction show that they spend significantly more time in flow states and significantly less time in passive consumption. They're not necessarily doing anything extraordinary. They're just more engaged with activities that allow them to use their skills, creativity, and capacity for connection. But wait, it gets even more beautiful when you consider what this means for aging and memory. When you're regularly engaged in meaningful activities, your brain forms richer, more detailed memories. Years later, you can remember specific moments, conversations, and experiences with vivid clarity. But periods of heavy social media use tend to create very few lasting memories. They compress into vague recollections of having been on the phone, without much detail about what actually happened. It's like your brain is a skilled photographer who can create beautiful, detailed images when there's enough time and light to work with. Flow activities provide the perfect conditions for this kind of memory formation. But social media is like trying to take photographs in a strobe light. Everything happens too quickly and chaotically for clear images to form. Meanwhile, there's a deeper wisdom here about how to live a life that feels rich and meaningful rather than just busy and stimulated. When you regularly engage in activities that create flow states, you develop what researchers call temporal sovereignty, the ability to choose how you want to experience time rather than having your experience determined by external forces. This doesn't mean you have to give up social media entirely. It means recognizing that your relationship with time is one of the most important aspects of your overall well-being, and making conscious choices about how you want to spend your finite moments on this planet. And that leads us to the most hopeful and practical part of our exploration, understanding how to create a life where time feels abundant, meaningful, and aligned with your deepest values. Part 8. Creating temporal abundance in a distracted world. Picture this familiar moment. You're at the end of a day, getting ready for bed, and you find yourself reflecting on how the day went. On some days, even if you were busy, you feel like you accomplished something meaningful, connected with people you care about, or made progress on things that matter to you. Time felt full and satisfying. On other days, even though you were constantly active, you feel like the day just slipped away without much to show for it. Time felt empty and rushed. We've all experienced both types of days, and the difference reveals something profound about how the quality of our attention shapes our experience of time. When your attention is fragmented and reactive, time feels scarce and unsatisfying. When your attention is focused and intentional, time feels abundant and meaningful, even when you're busy. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Your brain doesn't just experience time, it creates your sense of time, richness based on how deeply you engage with your experiences. When you're present and engaged, your brain forms detailed, emotionally rich memories that make time feel full and satisfying in retrospect. When you're distracted and scattered, your brain forms thin, forgettable memories that make time feel empty and wasted. Your brain is like a skilled chef who can create a nourishing, satisfying meal from simple ingredients when they have focused attention and intention. But when they're constantly interrupted and distracted, even the finest ingredients end up as a bland, unsatisfying mess. The ingredients of your life, your relationships, your work, your experiences are the same, but the quality of attention you bring to them determines the richness of the result. Meanwhile, in your brain, there's a beautiful process that happens when you choose to engage deeply with whatever you're doing. Your neural networks begin to synchronize, creating what researchers call coherent brain states. These states are associated with improved learning, better emotional regulation, and a natural sense of time flow that feels both energizing and peaceful. Try this right now. Think about the last time you felt like you had enough time. What were you doing? How were you feeling? Chances are you weren't rushing or multitasking. You were probably present with whatever you were doing, whether it was something simple like making coffee or something complex like working on a project you cared about. You know that feeling when you're fully absorbed in something meaningful and you look up and realize time has passed, but instead of feeling shocked or guilty, you feel satisfied and energized. That's what temporal abundance feels like. It's not about having more hours in the day. It's about experiencing the hours you have with greater depth and presence. What if I told you that people who report feeling like they have enough time don't actually have more free time than people who feel chronically rushed? The difference is in how they allocate their attention. They spend more time in focused, single-tasking modes and less time in scattered, multitasking modes. They're more selective about what they give their attention to, which allows them to experience whatever they choose more deeply. Here's something that will blow your mind. When you practice what researchers call temporal mindfulness, simply paying attention to how you're experiencing time moment by moment, you naturally begin to make choices that create more satisfying relationships with time. You become more aware of activities that make time feel rich versus activities that make time feel empty. But wait, it gets even more practical when you consider specific strategies for creating temporal abundance. One of the most powerful is what psychologists call attention restoration. This involves regularly engaging in activities that restore your brain's capacity for focused attention rather than depleting it. Nature is one of the most powerful attention restorers available to us. When you spend time in natural environments, your brain shifts into what researchers call soft fascination, a state where your attention is gently engaged but not overstimulated. This allows your attention systems to recover from the constant demands of digital life. Even looking out a window at trees or sky can begin this restoration process. Reading physical books is another powerful attention restorer. Unlike scrolling through feeds, reading requires sustained attention on a single stream of information. Your brain gets to practice the kind of focused engagement that creates satisfying time experiences. The physical act of turning pages also provides natural breaks that help your brain process and integrate what you're reading. Creative activities, whether it's cooking, gardening, playing music, drawing, or any form of making something, engage your brain in ways that naturally create flow states. When you're creating something, your brain has to integrate multiple types of processing in real time, which naturally synchronizes your neural networks and creates coherent time experiences. Deep conversations with people you care about are perhaps the most powerful way to create temporal abundance. When you're fully present with another person, listening deeply and sharing authentically, your brain enters a state of social flow that feels both timeless and deeply satisfying. These conversations create rich memories that make time feel meaningful in retrospect. Meanwhile, there's a beautiful paradox about time and social media that's worth understanding. When you use social media intentionally to connect with specific people, learn about topics you're genuinely curious about, or share something meaningful, it can actually enhance your sense of temporal abundance. The problem isn't social media itself, it's the mindless reactive way most of us have learned to use it. Intentional social media use might look like opening Instagram to see updates from a few close friends, engaging meaningfully with their posts, and then closing the app. or using Twitter to follow experts in a field you're passionate about and actually reading the articles they share, or using Facebook to stay connected with distant family members you genuinely care about. The key is bringing the same quality of attention to social media that you would bring to any other meaningful activity. When you're present and intentional, even digital interactions can contribute to temporal abundance rather than detracting from it. And that leads us to the most profound realization about time, attention, and the kind of life you want to create with your precious moments on this planet. Part 9. The Gift of Conscious Time. Ever notice something weird about how your relationship with time affects every other aspect of your life? You know that feeling when you're living in harmony with time, when you feel like you have enough time for the things that matter, when you're present with your experiences, when days feel full but not frantic. Everything else seems to fall into place more easily. Your relationships feel deeper, your work feels more meaningful, and you feel more like yourself. We've all had glimpses of this kind of temporal harmony, and it reveals something profound about how time awareness is really life awareness. When you're conscious about how you spend your time, you're inevitably more conscious about what you value, what brings you joy, and what kind of person you want to be. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Your relationship with time is actually your relationship with life itself. Time is the medium through which you experience everything. Your relationships, your creativity, your growth, your contribution to the world. When that medium is fragmented and unconscious, everything else becomes fragmented and unconscious too. Your relationship with time is like the foundation of a house. If the foundation is solid and well built, everything else can flourish. But if the foundation is cracked and unstable, no amount of beautiful decoration can make the house feel truly secure and comfortable. Developing a conscious relationship with time creates a foundation for everything else you want to build in your life. Meanwhile, in your brain, there's a profound shift that happens when you begin to treat time as sacred rather than something to be filled, killed, or escaped from. Your brain begins to prioritize different types of activities and experiences. You become naturally drawn to things that create depth and meaning, rather than things that merely provide stimulation or distraction. Try this right now. Think about someone you know who seems to have a beautiful relationship with time. Maybe they're not necessarily more productive or busier than other people, but they seem more present, more satisfied, more aligned with their values. What qualities do they embody? How do they move through the world? What can you learn from their example? You might not have noticed, but there's a specific quality of presence that people develop when they become conscious about time. They're more likely to listen fully when someone is speaking to them. They're more likely to savor their food instead of eating mindlessly. They're more likely to notice beauty in their everyday environment. They've learned to inhabit their moments rather than just passing through them. What if I told you that developing this kind of temporal consciousness isn't about becoming more disciplined or productive? It's about becoming more loving. When you treat your time as precious, you naturally become more loving toward yourself, more appreciative of your experiences, and more generous with your presence toward others. Here's something that will blow your mind. People who develop conscious relationships with time report higher levels of life satisfaction, better relationships, and greater sense of meaning, not because they accomplish more, but because they experience whatever they do with greater depth and appreciation. They've learned the secret of temporal alchemy, transforming ordinary moments into meaningful experiences through the quality of attention they bring to them. But wait, it gets even more beautiful when you consider how this ripples out into your relationships with other people. When you're present and conscious with your time, you naturally become more present and conscious with the people in your life. You listen more deeply, you notice more, you appreciate more, you appreciate more, you appreciate more. Your children seem to understand this intuitively. Watch a child who's completely absorbed in play, and you'll see someone who has no sense of time as separate from experience. They're not thinking about how long they've been playing or what they need to do next. They're completely immersed in the richness of the present moment. We can learn from this quality of temporal presence. Meanwhile, there's something profoundly hopeful about recognizing that you always have a choice about how to relate to time. Even in the busiest, most demanding periods of your life, you can choose to bring conscious attention to whatever you're doing. You can choose to be present with your experience rather than just getting through it. This doesn't mean you have to give up efficiency or productivity. It means recognizing that how you do something is often more important than what you do. You can wash dishes mindfully or mindlessly. You can have a conversation while checking your phone or with full attention. You can eat lunch while scrolling through social media or while actually tasting your food. The choice is always yours. And that choice, the choice to be present with your life as you're living it, might be one of the most important decisions you make every day. Part 10. Coming home to the present moment. Picture this scenario. You're lying in bed, ready to go to sleep, and you find yourself naturally reflecting on the day that's ending. Instead of that vague feeling that time disappeared into a blur of activities and distractions, you can actually remember moments from your day. You remember the taste of your morning coffee, the feeling of sunlight on your face, a genuine laugh you shared with someone, a moment of satisfaction when you completed something meaningful. We've all had days like this, and there's something deeply nourishing about being able to feel the fullness of time you've lived rather than the emptiness of time you've merely passed through. When you live with temporal consciousness, your days accumulate into a life that feels rich and meaningful rather than a blur of busyness that leaves you wondering where the time went. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. When you live with present moment awareness, you're not just changing how you experience time, you're changing how you experience yourself. You become more connected to your own thoughts, feelings, and values. You become more aware of what brings you joy and what drains your energy. You become more aligned with the person you actually are rather than the person you think you should be. Your consciousness is like a river that can either flow smoothly and clearly or become choppy and muddy. Social media and other forms of digital distraction tend to create choppy, muddy consciousness. Lots of surface activity, but not much depth or clarity. Present moment awareness creates smooth, clear consciousness where you can see deeply into your own experience. The different regions of your brain begin to work together more harmoniously. Your emotional processing becomes more balanced. Your attention becomes more stable. Your memory formation becomes richer and more detailed. You literally become more integrated as a human being. Try this right now. Take a moment to notice what's happening in your immediate experience. What sounds do you hear? What physical sensations are you aware of? What's the quality of light around you? How are you feeling emotionally? This isn't about changing anything. It's just about noticing what's actually happening right now. You know that feeling when you suddenly realize you've been on autopilot for a while, maybe driving somewhere and realizing you don't remember the journey, or eating a meal and realizing you didn't taste it. That's what unconscious time feels like. But when you practice present moment awareness, you develop the ability to wake up from autopilot and actually inhabit your experience as it's happening. What if I told you that this capacity for present moment awareness is one of the most practical skills you can develop? When you're present, you make better decisions because you're more aware of how different choices feel in your body. You have better relationships because you're actually available for connection. You experience more satisfaction because you're actually there for your own life. Here's something that will blow your mind. The present moment is the only time that actually exists. The past exists only in memory, and the future exists only in imagination. Yet most of us spend very little time in the only time that's real. We're usually lost in thoughts about the past or worries about the future, missing the only time where life actually happens. Social media keeps us particularly disconnected from the present moment because it's always directing our attention toward what other people are doing in other places at other times. When you're scrolling through your feed, you're literally everywhere except where you actually are. Your body is in one place, but your mind is scattered across hundreds of different locations and experiences. But wait, it gets even more hopeful when you realize that coming back to the present moment is always available to you. No matter how distracted you've been, no matter how much time you feel you've wasted, no matter how fragmented your attention has become, you can always choose to return to present moment awareness. It's like having a home you can always come back to, no matter how far you've wandered. The breath is one of the most reliable anchors for present moment awareness. Your breath is always happening now, always available to your attention, always bringing you back to your actual experience. When you notice you've been lost in distraction, simply feeling your breath can instantly reconnect you with the present moment. Your body is another powerful anchor for presence. Physical sensations, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the weight of your body in a chair, the temperature of the air on your skin, are always happening in the present moment. When you bring attention to these sensations, you naturally arrive more fully in the here and now. Meanwhile, there's something profoundly healing about present moment awareness. When you're fully present, anxiety naturally decreases because anxiety is always about future scenarios that may never happen. Depression often lifts because depression frequently involves rumination about past events that can't be changed. Present moment awareness doesn't solve all of life's challenges, but it gives you access to the clear thinking and emotional balance that help you respond to challenges more skillfully. And, perhaps most importantly, present moment awareness allows you to actually receive the gifts that life is constantly offering. The beauty of a sunset, the warmth of human connection, the satisfaction of meaningful work, the simple pleasure of a good meal, all of these are only available when you're present to receive them. As we come to the end of our exploration tonight, here's what we hope you'll take with you. Your relationship with time is your relationship with life itself. When you become conscious about how you spend your attention, you become conscious about how you spend your life. And when you learn to be present with your experience as it's happening, you discover that time isn't something you need to manage or escape from. It's something you can inhabit fully and gratefully. The mystery of why time feels different when we're scrolling social media isn't just a curious quirk of neuroscience. It's a doorway into understanding one of the most important aspects of human experience. Time is precious, not because it's scarce, but because it's the medium through which we experience love, beauty, growth, and connection. When we treat time consciously, we treat life consciously. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, perhaps you can rest in the satisfaction of having spent these moments together exploring something meaningful. Perhaps you can appreciate the gift of consciousness that allows you to reflect on your experience. And perhaps you can look forward to tomorrow as an opportunity to practice bringing more presence and awareness to whatever unfolds. Sweet dreams, and may your tomorrow be filled with moments that feel rich, present, and aligned with what matters most to you.